These two words changed my life. Let's fucking go, wildflowers. I'm back. Authenticity and Dishonest Harmony, episode 130. Welcome back to the podcast with a new name coming soon. Sorry for that reference. If you know, you know. But I will be retitling and rebranding this podcast. But I didn't want any more time to pass before I connect with you. And I have some stories to share with you. And all of this is going to tie together, these two words and this story that I'm going to share straight out the gate with you. These two words literally changed my life. But before I get to these two words, I want to share with you an experience I had trying to get back behind the microphone. I think that's the ironic piece of this. And this all ties together. So stay with me here. Yesterday, I sat down to record this podcast. I had written for a few hours. I was getting ready. Jim helped me develop the set where we're recording from right now, where I can do video and audio. And we were all excited. And I was nervous because, it's been a year and a half, you guys. It's been a while since I've been here. And I wanted it to be really good. And I sat down and I kind of had a Cindy Brady moment, for those of you who are old enough to remember that, where I just froze. And then I started bawling and just crying because I realized what was happening within me was something called dishonest harmony. And for those of you who listen to my podcast, you guys know what it's like to leave high demand religion and to try to find yourself again, to try to figure out who are you now that you don't have this major ideology that you subscribe to? And part of that journey, if you will, is I think it's walking towards who you are and who you've always been, but trying to find your own authenticity. And I realized what was happening is I was trying to present this view or this podcast that was happy and shiny. And over the course of this past year and a half, I have not been feeling happy and shiny. I have been going through a lot of personal issues, just deep trauma that I didn't even know was in me. And probably about, I'm going to say 7 or 8 months ago, a peer life coach that I'm friends with on Facebook, she shared this concept of the phrase dishonest harmony. I had never heard that before. And when that happened, with all the work I'd been doing personally before I heard that phrase, it was like everything started to align. And what that phrase did for me, which is basically, let me read you the definition. Of course, I have my notes in front of me. Dishonest harmony is a situation that appears peaceful, but is actually full of hidden tensions and deceptions. It can occur in families, workplaces, and other relationships. So as I'm telling you my stories, what I want you to do, Wildflower, is I want you to think of relationships or situations in your life where you're not being your authentic self and you're kind of fighting something within you. And if you are a people pleaser, a recovering people pleaser like myself, you have probably been in dishonest harmony every day of your life. Every fucking day, there is probably an experience you have where you are people pleasing someone. And when you are able to kind of download what I'm talking to you about, it's going to change everything for you. This one thing was like the missing piece that I needed to see where I was not showing up authentic and where I was showing up in dishonest harmony. So because it's very much in my toma, I'm constantly aware of it and kind of scanning for when I am and when I'm not talking about little interactions at the grocery store or something like that with someone. I'm talking about deep fundamental relationships in your life that maybe you've just had this sneaking frustration and you're always frustrated with this person and you can't figure out why. That's the mindset I want your brain to be in. As you're listening, I'm going to share you some examples from my life. I can't explain to you how helpful this has been to my own healing with some childhood trauma that I've had. I haven't even shared with you guys that I was able to see my piece in relationships today, and I could give a critical look to how I'm showing up in relationships and what that did for me. Not that it took away the trauma was still there, difficult situations, but I was able to see how I was showing up in a specific relationship. And then I was able to ask myself, do I want to? And that opened the floodgates. So I'm hoping that as you hear some examples, because you might be going, oh, where is this coming up for me? This is the piece where even when I sat down yesterday, I could tell that I was in dishonest harmony. My body and my mind, my heart were kind of fighting because I knew this happy, shiny face that I was trying to put forth wasn't feeling aligned with that. And what I wanted to say, I did a TikTok last night, which you can go watch if you'd like. Amy Logan Life is the handle. I did that later in the evening where I was very relaxed. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean. And I just allowed myself to speak freely. And what I realized is I didn't want to show up unauthentic with you, because that's kind of one of my biggest values now that I've left the church is I want to be in harmony with myself and the people in my life. And what that means is I might have to have some difficult conversations with people. So let me give you an example that happened years ago when Jim and I were living in California. We were having a date night, turned off our phones. We pulled back from the world and we were just being together and enjoying ourselves. And my mom called and texted and called and texted. And when we didn't answer, she kind of put out an APB for the rest of the family. I was upset with that, I should say. Jim wasn't as upset as I was. We were both upset, let's just say that. But we just kind of let it go that night. And then it kind of continued in the morning. And to make a long story short, the next day, I was livid. I was so angry. I can picture myself reenacting the story, right? Because if you're a people pleaser, you probably ruminate about what you really would have wanted to say, how you really wanted to show up in certain situations. And I remember talking to my brother, talking to Jim, and I was beside myself. I was so angry. So that happened. That's just one example of fighting myself because I wasn't willing to have a conversation with my mom about how upsetting that was to me. So at this time of my life, I didn't know about dishonest harmony. I didn't know about my own childhood trauma. I didn't know how much of a people pleaser that I was. So that comes and goes. But what I can say is, as I look back over this particular relationship, I can see since probably I got married, so back in 1990, I started to see how upset I would get with my mom about random things. I started to see when I learned this term, dishonest harmony, and I could look back at this particular relationship, I was able to go, oh my God, I am not being in an honest relationship with my mom because I have been stuffing down so many things over the years. I didn't know to make the connection. So that's just one example. And this is what I want you to start paying attention to your body, because your body's not going to lie to you. And if you're like me, this is a relationship I've had for 50 plus years, obviously. But I think it was when I left for school. And anyway, I started to just get frustrated with her all the time. I didn't know why. It was just a pattern. It was a habitual way that I responded. Okay, so that's one example. Let me give you one from around Christmas time. Jim's daughter and her boyfriend were coming to be with us. They were going to stay with us for a while around the holidays. And because of this past year, to do anything with anyone felt like too much for me. I have had a rough year. I've been depressed as I've been kind of unearthing a lot of this depression or a lot of this childhood trauma that I've been going through. And so if you've ever been in a heightened situation with something that you're dealing with that is very deep, anything like benign can set you off. So they were going to come and stay for like a week to 10 days or something like that. And I was like, I can't handle that. And it was nothing about her and her boyfriend. I love them. Like they are family and I wanted them to be with us. But I could tell I was having this, like my body was saying one thing and the words coming out of my mouth, it's fine. Yeah, of course, it's fine. I was in dishonest harmony with how I was really thinking and feeling, because as a people pleaser, I don't want them to feel bad. I love them. I want them to be welcome in our home anytime. But Jim and I were in the car talking about this. He's like, just tell me what you really feel. And because at this point I knew what dishonest harmony was, I was like, oh, what I really want to tell you is a week is fine. 9 or 10 days is too long for me. So what I learned is to speak my honest harmony means sometimes I may have to possibly make someone else feel uncomfortable. But you know what they didn't do? They didn't complain. They didn't even know when Jim said, a week is what we can do right now. There's something that changed in me. I'm like, wait, hold on. I don't have to people please right now. I don't have to say what I think everyone else wants me to say. These are the types of things that can happen for you. Now, you guys have all seen those memes where it's like growth comes outside of your comfort zone. So there's like a circle and you're in the circle and there's an arrow to outside the circle. That space is where you don't feel like it. It doesn't feel good. But what I have learned this past year is I've set in my depression. And the one thing I've done this year is not try to guilt myself about the depression, because normally I'd be like, you need to do more. You need to be this. You need to be that, right? Because that's what everyone else wants from me. I allowed my body, who has been suppressing probably, I don't know, let's just say 45 years of some trauma. I hadn't made the connections. And so for me, because authenticity is so important to me, I was able to start seeing certain relationships, and there's probably about, 3 or 4 key relationships in my life where I kept pushing down or suppressing my true opinions, my thoughts, my beliefs, my values, just to keep the peace. And part of that was so that I could be seen as a good ex-Mormon because, of our past and the religious trauma we've experienced. I had this, and I'm just going to say it, the black and white thinking that if the people I love the most in my life can see me as a good ex-Mormon who's not angry, then maybe I'll be perceived as still worthy of love from my Mormon family. And it's really hard to see those deep subconscious beliefs and thoughts you have about yourself that you don't even know. So when I say this past year, I have been busted open emotionally. I've had several breakdowns, and I can see that it was all tied to this wanting to be loved, which I think most of us experience. We want our family and friends to love us. But the cost of doing that with people in your life only harms you. And the tricky part is you think you're doing it to keep the peace, but your body knows different. So I want you to think of situations in your life where you can see it very clearly that you were not happy and you pushed it down. I think when you can start to see, oh my gosh, that one situation, that's it. That's dishonest harmony. I was not being my authentic self. And like I said, I'm not talking about little tiny interactions you have. I'm talking about the ones that keep tripping you up in life. Because the truth is, you are the only one who can change it, not the person who contributed to your trauma, not by playing it cool and thinking it doesn't affect you. Only you can change that dynamic, and the other people in your life don't have to change a thing. And that is mind-blowing. And so if you struggle with this area of your life, I'm going to dare bet most of us do. It is really hard to be honest with people that you have a habitual pattern with of suppressing your real feelings and people-pleasing to keep the peace. So when you change who you are, it has a ripple effect. And sometimes that doesn't feel very good. And when you've spent your life trying to avoid rejection, to start being honest feels terrible. But listen, when you are fearful of rejection and you're in dishonest harmony, who are you rejecting? You, Wildflower, are rejecting yourself. And when you can see that, and you don't want to do that anymore, and your willingness to feel uncomfortable to get to the other side of that might be writing a letter to your mom, which is what I did. A 6-page letter Took me a while to write. But this whole past year, I started to see my role in this very complex, multi-layered relationship in my life. It feels like you're doing the thing that you've tried to prevent yourself from feeling your whole life. So, if you can see it, you can change it. It's just like with anything else. Until you see the problem for what it is and not what you thought it was, you can't change it. So really kind of do a thought download on this, you guys. You know what that is. You just get all your thoughts on paper. If you're like, dishonest harmony. Who am I in dishonest harmony in relationships in my life? Focus on one person. How are you showing up in dishonest harmony? Don't blame anyone, not even yourself. Because honestly, that's a way we protect ourselves. And I was realizing how much I have protected myself. So I strongly recommend if you have a relationship in your life where you struggle with that, sit down, write it, get it out of your head and see what's coming up for you because you're going to feel something. I don't know what that would be for you specifically, but it can be so life-changing because I think the phrase people pleasing, because listen, people pleasing is the same thing as dishonest harmony, if we're going to be honest about it. But people pleasing sounds nice. We learned as LDS women to people please everybody. We are to keep the peace. We are the nurturers. But I think people pleasing just sounds nice because it has the word pleasing in it and we like to please people. But dishonest harmony has the both sides of things where people pleasing is just kind of you're people pleasing, right? But if you can see the dishonest harmony, you can see now the interaction between you and this other person in your life. Because hopefully you're thinking about a person. It could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a boss, it could be your mom or anyone else, a friendship. At the end of the day, you don't want to be in dishonest harmony with anyone because you do want to be authentic. If that is one of your values, maybe it's not, and you could just scroll on. But this is the missing piece to what I had been working on for a year. Now, you remember, if you're still here listening to my podcast, my last podcast was in September of 2023. And it was around that time that I had pulled out of 22 or more ex-Mormon groups. And I started to turn down the dial of the ex-Mormon noise. And you know, I have said before that the ex-Mormon world is amazing. But it's also the story that never ends. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to be like me. And you're going to be 16, 17, 18 years later going, God, I am still bitching and moaning about this. And I get that it's trauma. And I get that we want to feel community when we've lost everything. So please don't take that the wrong way. It's important. And it is a phase in your journey. But if you can see that you're addicted to the cycle, the loop of, oh my God, oh, they did this. Now they did this. And now they did this. It keeps you tethered to the trauma. And that is important to see. At some point, a decision can be made to turn down the volume. So when I did that for myself, what happened is my brain had space to expand in other areas. So initially, it wasn't that big of a deal. I just turned down the noise. I, at the same time, coincidentally, just stopped doing my podcast. And with that happening, I had the space to start to go, wow, what are some other areas in my life that are keeping me stuck? And so I haven't been here this past year with you because I have been doing some deeply personal work around some childhood trauma that I had put on a shelf. And instead of dealing with it, I didn't even see it as trauma, quite frankly. I just thought, oh, it's just my family. And so to see it for what it was involved me feeling all the feelings connected to it. I have learned so much about what it is to wear masks, and I know many of you are way ahead of me in this department. But when you start taking off masks that are faking how you're really feeling, you are left feeling very vulnerable. I was left feeling very vulnerable and raw, and I didn't even know what was happening. That's the weird thing. Like, I can look back at my religious trauma now kind of from a bird's eye view and go, oh yeah, I was in it and I didn't know, like all those years ago when the initial stages. But I never took the time to really dissect and deconstruct my own family and my place in my family. And to look at it from a 180-degree different angle changed everything. And that is scary as hell to do. The metamorphosis, the transformations that I have made this year have left me exhausted. But it has also left me feeling like I have connected back to myself. So when I sat down to do the podcast and I was having this weird, like, what the fuck is happening moment, I hadn't even connected it to what was really happening is I was in dishonest harmony. I was not showing up real. I was trying to put a face on. And what I've learned after leaving the church is I don't like that. Now, there were certain relationships where I had put on a shelf and just thought it doesn't apply to this. But with you guys, authenticity, I want that to be who I am. I am authentic. And I couldn't fake it this past year and a half. I had to be in my own stuff to figure this out. And that meant I just loved on the clients that I've had this year. And I focused on Wildflower Weekend, but I couldn't put my face out there, but I didn't know this until the last few months. I didn't realize what was happening, but I was having this internal conflict of like, well, I'm a life coach and I help people, therefore I can't have problems, which is a lie. Any therapist, any coach, any human being who's walking this planet is also feeling all the emotions. So even myself. And I felt like I was lying if I was to get up behind the microphone again and try to create this like, hey, I'm super happy, all is well. Because that is not what this past year has been for me. I have been in the trenches. I have been depressed. And it has been really hard, but it has all been so worth it. That sounds strange because it's been a rough year, but it was worth the work because I'm a better coach. Even with the clients who I've been working with this past year, I've shown up for them because I have been able to do that. And what I have learned, I've been able to take to my clients and help them. And so it's just been an interesting place. And so to come to the behind the microphone yesterday and to feel like I was lying, I could not do it. I didn't want to put on a face of all is well and things are great, especially with what's going on in the world. Let's be honest. What is going on in the United States of America, specifically where I live, the past couple months have been a lot. And I think most of you probably understand that. So that's just kind of like this looming thing overhead, even though in the meantime, I've been going through and making all these breakthroughs in my personal life. We have this cloud. But what I know about that as well is no one has the right to take away our inner joy, our inner peace, and our happiness. And that's why thought work, that is why I wanted to get back on the saddle here, is because the work that I do is important. And it helps you manage your emotions and it helps you manage your mind. And you don't even have to do it perfectly to find the healing you're looking for. But you do have to be willing to look at the proverbial shelves that we put a lot of our trauma, our fear, our pain, because at the end of the day, we have to keep going, right? So sometimes, like for me, I shut down this year after I turned down the ex-Mormon noise because the ex-Mormon noise kept me in the loop. And it kept my brain focused on, oh my God, that's so stupid. He said this happened. That's just a distraction for what I finally needed to get to at my 55 years of age, was to deconstruct and look at these very close relationships in my life and to decide, what do I want? What do I want as a grown-up? A grown-ass woman does not need to continue to show up in relationships that are harmful and that are fake. So that's why I'm back, because that's why we do this work. Does it mean that life is perfect? No. It means you're human. But if you're too scared or don't even know, too scared isn't the right word. I didn't even know I had this particular shelf. And it's just like your faith crisis shelf. You don't know you're doing it, that you're organizing this little closet that keeps all of your worries and your doubts and your fears. Well, you might be doing that in other areas of your life as well. And so that's why I wanted to share this concept with you. My friend, her name is Karen Anderson. She wrote a book, You Are Not Your Mother. Go check it out. I have it. It's really good. I feel like it just was good timing for me. I turned down the noise. I was able to see. I was able to see what I was struggling with so much more clearly once I moved a distraction out of my headspace. And, I have a podcast called Ex-Mormonology. And because I had turned down the noise, I was realizing the resistance is I don't want to keep talking about the fucking church anymore. Can I help you with it? Absolutely. But I can't have it be the biggest noise in my head. And you know how the ex-Mormon groups are. It's very easy to bitch and moan and be a keyboard warrior and talk about it. Like, I get that that's all important. But at some point, it's now camouflaging the underlying issues. And because, especially if you're a woman, you've been socialized as a woman, being the nurturer, the caretaker, the people pleaser, not that we're told to be people pleasers, but when you're told to put on a nice shiny face, in so many words, it's really hard to look at that shelf. And so fortunately, this happened a lot quicker than like my faith crisis. So as it was happening, I remember having this conscious thought like, oh, you're recognizing it and you're taking action quicker. So to kind of say, this past year and a half, I've been working on this. It certainly hasn't taken as long. It didn't take as long as what did with the faith crisis, because what I realized was I could feel the destabilization in my life. I could feel it happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels just like it did when my whole world fell apart when I left the church. That's how big it was for me this past year. All right, I want to lighten the mood with a funny example. One of my favorite comfort shows is Schitt's Creek. I adore that show on so many levels. And Alexa, love her. There's that part in I think the second season where she needs to break up with her golden retriever boyfriend, right? She needs to do it. She's like someone else. I think they're actually technically engaged, which she fumbled into as well. So she keeps going back to break up with her boyfriend. And she can't do it. And I just watched this episode probably a few weeks ago. And I remember seeing her. And she's like being like this with her face. And she's trying to. But she can't. Because she's realizing that if she says the thing to him, it's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt his feelings. And he's going to feel bad. So she just doesn't. And she smiles in her cute, beautiful way. And then she walks away like, oh no. That is dishonest harmony. She would rather feel crappy herself than to make him feel uncomfortable. But it's not her responsibility to manage his emotions. And so for her to, finally get to the point where obviously she has to do it, but watching the whole scenario happen, I'm like, that's dishonest harmony. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And we do this all the time. And so much growth can happen within you when you realize you're doing it and to make a change. And it doesn't feel good. But when your people-pleasing tendencies, your dishonest harmony tendencies get to a point where you are just mad all the time or depressed, whatever, full of anxiety, whatever it is, how it shows up for you, you're going to get to a point where you can't go forward anymore. And that is how I became with the relationship with my mother. And that was so hard and so big and so huge. And I'm still in it. We're currently no contact, which is hard. It's really hard, but I've needed to put the distance between us so that I can figure out what do I want in this relationship. And there's a lot of private stuff that I won't be going into, but I think you understand the concept here. This has been a relationship that I've danced around my whole adult life, and I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I literally could not do it. And that meant pulling away, and it meant saying no, which I've never done in that relationship in my life. And so it felt like I was just doing the big, terrible thing. And really what I was doing was being honest with myself and giving myself space to heal into this new person that I've always wanted to be. But because I've been so much in dishonest harmony, I couldn't see it. So I hope that phrase wakes something in you. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's not easy. It's been a really rough year. And like I said, I'm still in it, but I think that it was more important for me to be honest and authentic with myself than to continue dancing a dance that was not good for me. I think one of the hardest things with all of life that we go through is that you, and only you, are responsible for your own healing. And that is something you have to take very seriously. And if you're stuck in the blaming other people part of life, which I was in for a very long time, it feels excruciatingly painful to do things different than you've done them. So, like I said, Wildflowers, I am back. I will be creating new content. I am renaming this podcast. I don't know what it is at the time, the podcast with no name currently. But I will be going in a different direction as far as just helping you through all the things. You have the ex-Mormonology to work through all of your religious trauma with, and now we go forward. So I am evolving as well. And what I want to share with you after the culmination of this past year, I have put together a program, a beta program called the Mama Trauma Map, where I am going to show you exactly what I did, what it looked like, what it felt like, and how you can incorporate this into your life as well, because that is how passionate I feel about this. Fundamentally life-changing. Now, it could be your mom, it could be your husband, it could be a best friend. It doesn't have to be your mom, is my point. The Mama Trauma Map, though, is going to help you find clarity about how you've been showing up in dishonest harmony and if you want to change it. So it's an 8-week group coaching program. I have 10 spots. A couple of them are spoken for. We start April 1st, and we are going to figure this out together. I can't wait to share with you how this has changed my life and how it can change your life too. So it's a beta program. It's $275 for 8 weeks of coaching. You get a manual. You get to meet other people who are in a similar situation. And most of the people who are within my kind of sphere are ex-religious people. So we'll have that in common. You don't have to be though. And we're going to talk about this and we're going to figure it out. So I would love for you to join us. You can go to my website and you can click there. But $275 for 8 weeks of group coaching. And I'm going to coach you and I'm going to help you. I am going to help you feel better about who you are in that relationship. And that doesn't mean you have to go no contact. It doesn't mean you have to go low contact. And it doesn't mean you have to be best friends with the person that you're struggling with. But what it does mean is that you're going to find what you need to heal for yourself. So head over to amyloganlife.com. Come join me and 10 other amazing humans who also have the same desire that you do. I'm pricing this at a really low price point. So go sign up. All right, Wildflowers, I am happy to be back. I did it. I did the podcast. I had been really scared to do this for too long because I felt so vulnerable. What I have learned, I cannot not share it with you. So I hope you'll join me, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the No Name Podcast.